with the top 10 best moments of the Ant-Man film franchise. Now, when I say the top 10 best moments from the now we're going to continue this off with the top 10 best moments. Now, we are only talking about the three films, not of any of the other appearances of the characters in the MCU, but specifically the three films. Let's go ahead and get it. Now, coming in at number 10, the Ant-Man versus Falcon fight that was featured in the first Ant-Man film. It was a very fun fight. It was actually pretty cool, utilizing the abilities of both characters. And again, I always have to say that the presentation of Ant-Man in the MCU done spectacularly, and the combat is awesome. And it was nice seeing these two go back and forth, especially Falcon, because I haven't really seen him go toe to toe really with anybody like that. So it's pretty cool seeing the character do something, and they just have this really tete-a-tete on screen. One of the best fights of the MCU, in my opinion. Coming in at number 9, the San Francisco street chase, featured in Ant-Man and the Wasp. Now, I don't care what nobody says, that freaking street chase was awesome. We get to see these characters take on the bad guys in different creative ways, whether it's them utilizing the Pym particle technology to attack them, or them engaging with them in combination with it. There's interesting fights. The setup looks really cool. The malfunctioning aspect of Ant-Man's suit features some pretty comedic and pretty interesting and cool scenes when car shrinking. They're using that in the combat and the transverse and all of that. It's just overall is one of the best chases in the MCU. Maybe not as memorable as the Captain America Panther chase, but it's definitely up there. Now, coming in at number 8, the Ant-Man versus Yellow Jacket briefcase fight. Look, Ant-Man fights are awesome, especially when they utilize the shrinkage, and which going into this world where all of these everyday objects are used as basically a battlefield for these miniaturized characters. And definitely just visually it just looks really, really good. The presentation, how chaotic it is, definitely very, very memorable scene. Coming in at number 6, I think I said it's a 10, 9, 8, 7. I'm sorry. Coming in at number 7, Scott meets Kang, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania. Now, say what you want about that film. Kang definitely made an impression, and the very conversation that he has with Scott initially comes off as very sincere. But then the dialogue and the conversation go into an area where we see that Kang isn't a good guy, and he is willing to do whatever it takes, manipulate whoever it takes, strong arm anybody it takes to get what he wants, and it's very menacing. And you have to give that up to Jonathan Majors, because he definitely sold the character, and that scene was actually pretty cool. And I love seeing superheroes dealing with that interesting kind of dilemma. Although I don't really like Cassie's character in the film, I understand that at the emotional core, as a father, he does not want his daughter to be in that position. So I thought the conversation itself was actually really good, but just the bit of a threat at the end of it was pretty much icing on the cake for me. Coming in at number 6, Scott's first shrink. This again is one of the times where it just visually looks really good. The way it's presented, the way it looks, kind of the comedic value behind it was actually really, really good. We see Scott's just stolen the Ant-Man suit, and he ends up hiding in the bathroom, shrinks in the tub. The tub looks completely massive. The way the water in the tub ends up watching looks pretty cool when he's falling in between the gaps of the wood and stuff in the apartment or wherever the hell it is. Then there was the moment with him going through the window, the giant rat. The rat was actually pretty adorable, but I wouldn't want to get ate by it. But like that whole scene was a great introduction to what Ant-Man is, and you know what we were expecting or weren't expecting, but we're going to see in the Ant-Man franchise. And it was a pretty cool shot. It was actually really good the way it was set up, the way it was shot. 2 thumbs up. Coming in at number 5. Now this Ant-Man doesn't get too many. Ant-Man does like really cool stuff, but there's not a lot of moments in the MCU or pretty much for his franchise really where he gets moments like he's straight up badass. But this definitely is one of the moments like, oh yes, Ant-Man is freaking badass. Even though in Endgame when you see him, you know, at the end battle, that was pretty badass too. That was like, yeah, he's badass. But in Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, we get to see Ant-Man marching on Kang's stronghold, and him just absolute giant coming in like a badass to save his daughter's life was actually pretty freaking awesome. And definitely I gotta give it to him. He's sitting here swatting the buildings and stuff. He's sitting here trying to defend it, taking all of these energy blasts to get to her. He's trying to stop Kang from leaving. It's just ultimately a very memorable and unique scene, and it definitely is one of his better moments, if not one of the best moments. Coming in at number 4, the Wasp versus Ghost fight in Ant-Man and the Wasp. Now, I mean, I love fight sequences, and I will admit I wish we did have more fights between like female characters in comic book films. There ain't a lot. One of the best ones that I've seen out the top of my head was the Black Widow versus her sister in the Black Widow film. Like that fight was hands down one of the best ones, like in movies, because it was so brutal. And this fight isn't as brutal, but it looks really cool because you get to see again Ghost using her phasing abilities mixed with a Wasp using her shrinking abilities, and the scene itself looks really, really cool. And that's one thing I love about superhero films is when we see fights like this, them utilizing their powers, their technology, their skills in the fights. It creates a very diverse and very unorthodox fight sequences that are really, really cool. So I really appreciated that scene. Not to mention it helps make Wasp out to be pretty badass. Coming in at number 3, Hank and Janet are reunited, Ant-Man and the Wasp. Now, in the first Ant-Man film, Hank ends up telling, Hope and Scott that his wife didn't die. She ended up shrinking to stop a missile, and she got lost in the quantum realm, which is a theory he had, but he didn't really express like that. But in the second film, one of the storylines is him going to rescue her after she links up through Scott with a quantum line or tether or whatever. So he gets verification that she's alive. Basically, Ant-Man and the Wasp is them trying to get her from the quantum realm. And it's very emotional because she's been gone for like 30 years, and Hope has not seen her mom, not 30 years, but it's been quite a while. Hope was a young girl when her mom disappeared, I believe, and yeah, she was really, really young. And it's nice seeing characters who haven't seen each other that long come together, and you see that this man has all his brilliance and stuff, and he put himself into his brilliance because heartache and stuff, because he ain't seen his he thought he lost his wife. So it was nice seeing her character come back, and just a good for the story and for Hank Pym. And plus, what is an Ant-Man story without Hank and Janet? Now, I do realize there's some interpretations of Hank come off a bit of a douchebag and very abusive to Janet, but we don't get that in the MCU, and 2 thumbs up for that. So that's what I'm talking about. Coming in at number 2, Ant-Man versus Yellow Jacket, the toy fight, presented in the first Ant-Man film. Great. We already saw the briefcase fight. It was actually pretty cool. What makes this fight, again, the scope of it looks really, really cool. The fight itself is really, really cool. And then using the toys as the battleground was actually pretty cool. And of course, The funniest bit was with the Thomas the Tank Engine scene. It was actually pretty freaking funny, and I really, really enjoyed it. Just ultimately, and then what made another thing is the stakes. It isn't like worldwide stakes in the film, but Scott's trying to save his daughter while he's battling Yellow Jacket in this room. Ultimately, just like I said, just great. Visually, it looks really cool, and the fight itself is actually really, really cool. Now, coming in, maybe not I guess number one is the Army of Ants scene in Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. Now, the reason why I like this, and for those who don't know, what the hell is the Army of Ants scene? During the end battle, after Kang is kicking everybody's butt, an army of ants show up. And the reason why I like this is because when you think of Ant-Man, you think about ants. It's like, what the hell can ants do? This is the scene where it's like, okay, ants came in and it was pretty cool. You know what I'm saying? Army of ants just overran. It's like, imagine Ant-Man if ants were giants. This is what he could, and with the technology that he's capable of, and how advanced the ants were. What if Ant-Man created giant ants? He could actually create ants that could do this exact same thing and be like a real threat, So that's the scope of it that I like. The fact that the ants just seemed like they were just a real threat in that moment. It was actually pretty cool. It looked pretty cool. Ridiculous, of course. Stupid, yes. It didn't really make any sense. The fact that the ants were even in the movie don't make any sense. But I just thought it looked really cool because this is Ant-Man, and they turned the concept of ants into like a major threat, and it took them going to the quantum realm to do that. And I was like, that's okay, pretty cool. Like, would there be a comic book adaptation of Ant-Man controlling like a kingdom of ants or something? Would be pretty cool, wouldn't it? If the ants could do stuff like that in the way it was presented.